What is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everyone's doing well out there. We're talking about our quarterback and tight end rankings here for Week 8 fantasy football. Now, this will be our last posted rankings video here of this week. If you're still looking for more like flex rankings, defense rankings, kicker rankings, don't forget, we have those as well. They're a member perk here on the channel. So consider hitting that little blue join button here right underneath the video. You're going to get those extra rankings. You're going to get a member-only live stream. You're going to get access to Discord and a lot of other bonus content that nobody else gets to see throughout the season. But we're not wasting any more time. We're diving right into the rankings, kicking off with quarterbacks. Number 1, it's Jalen Hurts. And really, this one is all about the matchup. A great matchup going up against the Washington Commanders, who can't stop anyone in the passing game. Add to the fact that Jalen Hurts just keeps racking up points each and every week, he's going to be number 1 here in Week 8. Number 2, it's Lamar Jackson. Talk about a great matchup. He's going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, last week, Lamar Jackson was absolutely unstoppable. I really don't think the Arizona Cardinals are going to be able to contain him either. That's why he's at number 2. Number 3, it's Patrick Mahomes going up against the Denver Broncos. Now, honestly, we made fun of this Denver defense for many weeks here to start the season, but they're actually starting to play a little bit better. And they held Patrick Mahomes to only 1 touchdown pass a couple weeks ago, but we're starting to see Mahomes and the Chiefs gain a little bit of momentum. I got him at number 3. Number 4 is Josh Allen, going to be at home Thursday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, overall, the Bills aren't playing great, but that's just leading to more and more fantasy points going the way of Josh Allen. He's still at number 4. Number 5, it's Justin Herbert in a matchup going up against the Bears of Chicago. This should be a much easier matchup this week for Justin Herbert, and really the play of Josh Palmer is helping raise his floor weekly. That's why he's at number 5. Number 6, it's Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. Not a huge week for him. Last week, that Baltimore Ravens defense really limited him, but now he's got a matchup going up against the Las Vegas Raiders, whose secondary is banged up right now. I got Jared Goff at 6. Number 7, it's Tua Tagovailoa going up against the New England Patriots. And no, this isn't really because of the matchup. It's more so because we don't know if we're going to have Tyreek Hill this week or not. Obviously, Tyreek is a huge part of this offense and is not somebody that is easily replaced, so I got Tua drop down a few spots to number 7. Number 8, it's CJ Stroud coming off his bye week going to Carolina to face the Panthers. Now, a huge benefit this week for CJ Stroud is he should have rookie wide receiver Tank Dell back, and that definitely gives him another big play option. That's why Stroud's at 8. On to number 9, then it's going to be Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals, in what looks like a difficult matchup going up against San Francisco. But Burrow's coming off his bye week. He looked healthier pre-bye, and we just saw this San Francisco secondary get torched by Big Kirko and the Minnesota Vikings. So Joe Burrow at number 9. On to number 10, it's Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got a matchup going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Should be much easier for them to throw on Pittsburgh than run on them this week. Trevor Lawrence at number 10. Number 11, it's Matthew Stafford in a difficult matchup going up against Dallas. His floor is just so safe these days. Now, obviously, the touchdowns haven't really been there, and that's what's keeping him from going higher in the rankings. He's at number 11. Then we go to number 12. It's Kirk Cousins, Big Kirko himself, going up against the Green Bay Packers on the road in Lambeau. Now, Kirk went out last week against the San Francisco 49ers, a very difficult defense, and made it look like child's play. So even though this isn't a great matchup for him going up against Green Bay, we're starting to see Minnesota gain some of that momentum, and I love how he's starting to trust Jordan Addison deeper down the field. He's at number 12. Number 13, there's going to be Sam Howell, Washington Commanders, in a matchup going up against Philadelphia. It's almost impossible to run against Philadelphia, but you can throw all over them bad boys, which I expect Sam Howell to do once again, like he did a little bit earlier in the season. I got him at 13. 14 is Jordan Love in a matchup going up against Minnesota. But this Minnesota secondary is starting to play a lot better, and the offense in Green Bay just looks out of sync. Many people will look at box scores or they'll just watch the TV broadcast and they want to blame it all on Jordan Love, but he is not playing bad football if you actually go back and watch the tape. It's also not helping him that all of his weapons can't stay healthy around him, so for right now he's at 14. 15, this is where I've penciled in Sam Darnold because it sure doesn't look like we're going to have Brock Purdy this week, who's in the concussion protocol still. But I will tell you this, if Brock Purdy is active and playing in this game, he's going to be a Verge top 12 quarterback for me. As of right now, though, with him being up in the air, I wanted to include Sam Darnold in case he is the starter this week. People kind of have an understanding of where to put him. I put him at 15, and it's really because of this overall offense. I know we're not going to have Deebo Samuel again, but Sam Darnold in this San Francisco offense should still have a fairly safe floor, and that's why I have him right here at 15. 16 is Dak Prescott coming off his bye week, going up against a difficult matchup in the Los Angeles Rams. Really, the reason I've dropped Dak a little bit lower, there's not a whole lot of touchdowns going around in Dallas, and for whatever reason, they're not overly involving CeeDee Lamb like they should. Number 17, it's Kenny Pickett, the highest I've probably ranked him in quite some time, and it's really due to the matchup going up against Jacksonville and the return of Deontay Johnson. We saw him play 66% of the snaps last week. I expect that to increase this week. That's why Kenny Pickett is at 17. 18, it's Desmond Ridder of the Atlanta Falcons in a matchup going up against Tennessee. A lot easier to throw on Tennessee than it is to run on Tennessee, and Ridder in this Atlanta Falcons offense has shown here as of late that they're going to open up the passing game just a little bit, so he's at 18. 19 is Derek Carr. Not a bad matchup for him going up against Indianapolis, but this is another one of those offenses that just looks out of sync. I've never seen Derek Carr so visibly upset so many times throughout a game. It's like he's constantly arguing with his wide receivers on what routes they should be running. There's an absolute disconnect somewhere here, and that's why Derek Carr is at 19. 20, it's Gardner Minshew, a difficult matchup going up against the New Orleans Saints, a solid secondary, and Marshawn Lattimore could definitely limit Michael Pittman. If that's the case, we're going to have to lower the ceiling down for Gardner Minshew. I got him at 20. 21 is Geno Smith, a very difficult matchup going up against Cleveland, and at the time of this recording, we don't even know whether or not we're going to have DK Metcalf as a full go this week. Now, I know we didn't have him last week, but I don't know if we can rely on Jake Bobo each week to raise the ceiling of Geno Smith, so he's at 21. 22 is Russell Wilson going up against Kansas City. In their last meeting, he only threw for 95 yards and scored like 6 fantasy points. There still aren't enough people out there giving credit where credit is due to the Kansas City defense, and that's why Russ is at 22. 23, it's Baker Mayfield, Thursday Night Football, going into Buffalo to face the Bills. A Bills defense that's pretty banged up. Now, Baker's one of those guys you kind of look at as an injury fill-in or a bye week replacement, but with no bye weeks this week, Baker Mayfield's dropped down to 23, and then 24, no, I'm not sipping the Kool-Aid. Tyson Bagent just has that good of a matchup here this week going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that just gives up fantasy points at will to opponents. Tyson Bagent didn't look half bad last week, and I expect him to get a little bit more confident this week in pushing the ball further down the field, so he's going to be sitting right here at 24. And those are going to be my top 24 quarterbacks here for Week 8 fantasy football, but we're not done in today's show. No, now we're talking about tight ends, the football kind, and throwing it over to Kyle.
Yo, what is going on, headliners? The tight end position, I know, for a lot of you is a mess right now. We've got a few guys at the very top end that are safe, and then after that, it's kind of like this mixture of some high upside with super low floor, and we just really hope in any given week that a guy scores a touchdown. But I've got my top 18 tight ends for you in this video, and then I got a few guys that are just on the outside looking in. So let's go ahead and hop into it. And I don't know if Taylor Swift is going to be at Kelsey's game this week, so maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling in the world, but it really doesn't matter. He's still number 1 in the rankings. Yeah, you may not be interested in hearing about Taylor Swift anymore, and I get it if you're not, but it really doesn't matter because it is funny that Travis Kelce is averaging almost like 50 yards more in games that Taylor Swift comes to. So being at Denver this week, probably not going to see her, but that's okay. He's still the safest tight end in all of football. We know he's going to get a lot of work against the worst defense in football right now. At number 2 and number 3, we have Mark Andrews and TJ Hockenson, and you can really group these two guys into the top tier of tight ends right now. Travis Kelce may have the highest weekly ceiling of any of these guys, but Mark Andrews and TJ Hockenson share a very similar floor to Travis Kelce as well. Mark Andrews is coming off a really good game against the Detroit Lions, scored a couple of touchdowns, really being utilized heavily in that new passing attack for the Baltimore Ravens, and gets a soft defense with Arizona this week. TJ Hockenson had 3 weeks there where he was outside the top 12 looking in, but now he was right back to it. 11 targets last week, and going up against Green Bay, we'll probably see quite a bit of targets again this week. Now we reach the segment where we're talking about a few guys that have a lot of upside, but they bring a lot of risk as well. Dallas Goedert, Sam Laporta, Darren Waller, all of them have upside, but you have to look at it and say, how safe are their floors? And right now, after the last couple of weeks, Dallas Goedert has a very safe floor. He's the number 2 target in the offense. Sam Laporta has been targeted heavily as well in this offense, right behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. At home now against Las Vegas, definitely a good matchup. And Darren Waller kind of turned things around last week. Hopefully, his quarterback for right now continues to be Tyrod Taylor, but we'll monitor Daniel Jones. When you take a look at all 3 of these guys, Goddard at 4, Laporta at 5, Darren Waller at 6, they all share very similar floors and very similar upside. They're all kind of interchangeable right now, and they all have pretty decent matchups this week. George Kittle is kind of just on the outside of that last group at number 7. And the reason for that is if there's no Deebo Samuel, there is an increased chance and more targets. And we saw that last week, 7 targets last week. But his performances this year have really been up and down, and it's been hard to pinpoint exactly why. We do know, though, that if anyone's missing in the offense, it does bring a better chance of more targets for George Kittle. And of course, being one of the best tight ends in all of football, he has a pretty high ceiling every single week because the dude could really score from anywhere. At number 8, Evan Ingram. The problem with Evan Ingram right now is he's just not scoring touchdowns, which gives him a really low ceiling every single week, but he's still being looked at very often. And at number 8 this week, he's got a decent floor because he'll probably see anywhere between 5 and 7 targets. But if he doesn't score, he really can't go any higher than this. At number 9, I've got Taysom Hill. Go ahead and sound the alarms and go ahead and make sure, check on me that I'm not feeling too sick or there's something wrong with me. I haven't hit my head recently, I don't think, but I'm moving him up to number 9 this week. And last week I explained I don't rate Taysom Hill because he's not being utilized as an actual tight end. But I've also explained in almost every single show except my running back show since then, the reason why I'm considering him more of a legit tight end option now. And that's because he's actually getting work in the passing game. He's getting targets, which he wasn't getting before. At number 9, going up against Indianapolis, as long as Juwan Johnson continues to be out, then Taysom Hill should continue to be a tight end option. And this might be crazy to think, but at number 9, I have Taysom Hill 4 spots higher than the consensus rankings. And number 10, Dalton Kincaid. Yes, we're going to be missing some Dawson Knox. Does that automatically just mean more targets for Dalton Kincaid? I don't want to go as far as saying that. However, the one area that I am looking for that Kincaid can get a boost in would be in the red zone because Dawson Knox was looked at so much by Josh Allen. Hopefully Kincaid can help take that over. Kyle Pitts at number 11 going up against Tennessee. Hopefully Kyle Pitts this week can get a couple of more targets and even score a touchdown. He had a great catch last week, but not enough volume. Tennessee just traded one of their best secondary options, so hopefully that helps open things a little bit for Kyle Pitts. Dalton Schultz at number 12 has 3 straight matchups with a touchdown. Carolina's a lot more difficult against the pass than some of those teams were, so he does have a reduced upside this week. And if for some reason he can't find the end zone against Carolina, he does finish more towards like being a high tight end 2 or a low tight end 1. He just doesn't bring the type of upside without that touchdown potential, and this matchup might not have it. At number 13, Jonnu Smith going up against Tennessee. He's getting a little bit more looks than Kyle Pitts right now, and he's had more targets than Kyle Pitts this season, but his upside doesn't seem to be as much. Jonnu Smith has a touchdown, just like Kyle Pitts does, but isn't really looked towards in the red zone as much as we would like. He's more of a safe floor tight end every single week. As long as we can keep getting him 5 to 6 targets, he's a guy that we continue to start. At number 14, Michael Mayer going up against Detroit. They've had issues stopping tight ends, and they got burned by Mark Andrews last week. Michael Mayer, we saw a breakout performance a couple of weeks ago, disappeared this past week, but if Las Vegas is going to stand any chance against Detroit on the road, they're going to have to utilize all their weapons. They're going to have to get the ball out quick, and that's where Michael Mayer can make a difference. Jake Ferguson at number 15, I've got to see him get back on track with his targets. At one point, he was averaging just under 7 targets per game, and that's greatly disappeared over the last couple of games. It's tough to see that. Jake Ferguson, to me, is a key to unlocking this Dallas offense, and unfortunately, they just aren't able to get the key in the hole quite yet. David Njoku at number 16 is a tale of 2 cities right now, because if you look at him in his current ranking status and his current numbers, it makes sense. But if you go back and look at the film, he's had multiple big plays, including like a huge 40 or 35-yard touchdown called back 2 weeks ago. He would be extremely higher in the rankings if it weren't for those penalties negating those big pickups by David Njoku. And at some point in time, one of those big plays is not going to get called back, and we're going to change our tune on what's happening with Njoku. And number 17, Cole Kmet, no targets last week, so it is a concern that him and Bagent might not be on the same wavelength. And going up against LAC and potentially being in a negative game script, this would be a great opportunity for Cole Kmet. I just don't know how safe his floor is. All right, we've got a few guys just on the outside looking into the rankings, and there's one or two reasons why maybe they still need to be mentioned this week, even if they are not high enough to crack the top 18. Hunter Henry going up against Miami, it's going to be a negative game script more than likely for New England. And if it's a negative game script, my hope is Mac Jones, who played great last week, is going to be looking towards Hunter Henry more times than not. But with the way he's played lately and the fact that he's banged up, it makes sense why you wouldn't trust him. Luke Musgrave going up against Minnesota this week. He's been dealing with some injuries and a concussion this year, so he hasn't been on the field as much as we would like. Now, when he is on the field, it also doesn't feel like he's getting the targets that we would like. This potentially could be a good matchup where Green Bay is going to have to throw the ball, and because of that, Musgrave could see some targets, especially if Christian Watson continues to be banged up. But for one reason or another, they're just not getting him the volume I would love to see. Trey McBride looked like he was making a move for Zach Ertz's job anyway a couple of weeks ago, and now that Ertz is going to be missing for a few games, it is conceivable that a lot of owners out there grabbed up McBride in the hopes that they'll be able to play him at some point in time. Do I want to go with him this week against Baltimore? Absolutely not, but some of you may not have a choice. Gerald Everett and Donald Parham. Now, Everett is banged up, and as of this recording, he has not practiced as of yet, so Donald Parham is going to be mentioned right alongside him in case Everett has to miss. But since the Mike Williams injury, Everett has had to play out in the slot a little bit more often, and that's good because he can be a mismatch out there. We'll continue to monitor his injury into the Sunday night game, but if he can't go, Donald Parham would be a decent replacement for those of you that were trying to play Gerald Everett this week. Everett's got good touchdown upside this week, but if for some reason the Chargers get out in front of Chicago and it becomes a positive game script for them, Gerald Everett may not see as many targets as we would like. Tyler Higbee going up against Dallas has kind of fallen off the radar at this point. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are seeing over 70% of the team targets right now, and that's not leaving a whole lot left for Tyler Higbee. The volume just isn't high enough for him to become a high upside tight end play. And finally, Cade Otton, it's absolutely crazy, but the statistics show that he's on the field for over 90% of the offensive snaps for Tampa Bay. He has the highest percentage of all tight ends in football, and yet he's utilized less than almost everybody. We're going to continue to monitor that, and maybe at some point in time, they do try to utilize him a little bit more, but just being on the field doesn't lead to fantasy production. So Cade Otton for right now is going to be on the outside looking in. Well, there you have it, Headliner Nation. Quite a few tight end options for you this week. And if something doesn't feel right about my rankings and you feel like you prefer one guy over another, go with your gut. My hope is with these rankings, they at least helped you make a decision one way or another, whether you agree with them or you don't. But before you get out of here, hit that like button for me. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on those bell notifications if you haven't done so yet. So anytime we go live or we post a video, you'll know about it right away. And speaking of being live, we'll be live Saturday night, we'll be live twice on Sunday morning, and we'll be live Monday afternoon as well. But for now, Headliner Nation, peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, enjoy football this weekend, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.